My name is Elly. I'm 71 years old, a retired nurse, and until a few months ago, I lived with my son and his wife in a house I helped them buy. I cooked dinner most nights, paid for most of the groceries, and watched their children so they could work late, or travel, or just take a break. I thought I was part of their family. I thought I was wanted. It happened on a Tuesday. Snow had been falling since morning, soft and steady, blanketing everything like a hush. I had made tea and folded the laundry. The house was quiet, but not the good kind of quiet. It was the kind that makes your chest tight, like the air is waiting for something awful. Bradley wouldn't look at me. He stayed buried in his phone while Juliana asked about the deed again. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to leave a mark. I told them calmly that I wasn't ready to sign anything. I said maybe we could talk later after dinner when the kids were asleep. But Juliana didn't wait. She told me I was being emotional, said I needed some fresh air. Her hand gripped my arm, not hard, not at first, just firm. I remember the smell of her perfume, bitter and sweet, too strong in that small kitchen. I remember Bradley finally standing up but still not looking at me. He moved beside her. His hand brushed mine like he meant to help, but his jaw was tight, and I could feel something shift in the air between us. The next thing I knew, I was falling. My back hit the glass, and I heard it crack before it gave way completely. There was a loud, dry sound, and then the world turned cold. I landed in the snow, half inside, half out, surrounded by shards. My coat tore. Blood mixed with the white. My hands shook. For a second, I thought I might never get up again, but I did. I always do. Inside, I heard Juliana yelling that it was an accident, that I lost my balance, that they had just tried to guide me outside for some air. But no one opened the door. No one checked on me. Not even Bradley. I stood slowly. My left hand was bleeding. My ankle throbbed. The cold bit through my clothes and into my skin. I looked back at the house, at the kitchen, where I had spent so many years baking birthday cakes, packing lunches, and making soup when they were sick. No one was at the window. There was no apology, no rush to help, just silence. And in that silence, I understood something that had taken me too long to see. I was not their mother anymore. I was a name on a deed, an inconvenience, a problem to solve. I turned and walked down the driveway. The snow was heavier now, softening the sound of my steps. I didn't take anything with me. No coat, no phone, no plan. Just the sting in my hands and the cold in my bones. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't even call a friend. I walked until I found a diner open on 4th Street. The waitress didn't flinch when she saw the blood. She handed me a napkin and said, "Take your time." And I did. That night, I checked into a cheap motel, the kind where the heat clicks on in bursts and the blankets smell like bleach. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at my torn coat and the red seeping into the lining. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there letting the quiet fill every crack they had left in me. I knew one thing with perfect clarity. I would never walk back into that house again. Not as their mother, not as their burden, not ever. The motel room was small, just a twin bed and a desk, but it was quiet. I sat on the edge of the mattress with the light off and my coat still wrapped around me, blood dried stiff on the sleeve. The heater ticked like an old clock, and for a moment it was the only sound in the world. I didn't sleep much that night, not because of pain, but because my mind wouldn't settle. I kept replaying it all, not just the fall, but the months leading up to it. Little things I hadn't wanted to see. A phone bill I didn't remember agreeing to transfer. A letter from the county office that never showed up. At times, Juliana offered to take care of the groceries, but then started adding questions about the deed. Quiet, curious questions dressed up as concern. I used to brush it off, told myself I was imagining things, that they were just trying to help. But the truth had been there, circling, waiting for me to stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. One afternoon, a few months back, Juliana had taken the kids to her mother's, and I had the house to myself. I was organizing the bookshelf, and came across an old ceramic owl, something from a flea market years ago. I had turned it into a small camera tucked discreetly behind the photo frames. I told no one. I didn't even think I'd need it. I just had a feeling. That owl sat in the living room, quiet and still, watching. I had almost forgotten about it. But that night in the motel, staring at the ceiling fan and holding my injured hand to my chest, I remembered. I called Maya the next morning. She used to work with me at the hospital handling compliance and security systems. She didn't ask questions, just listened, then sent over instructions to recover the footage. While I waited, I made a list. Not of revenge, not yet, just facts. Things I needed to see clearly. Things I had overlooked, like the time Bradley sorted the mail before I even saw it, said it was just junk. Or how Juliana asked if I had updated my will and if she should help me review it. How they suddenly offered to handle my prescriptions, my bank app, even my Medicare card, which vanished after they said they'd keep it safe. At first, I chalked it up to disorganization to age. I thought I was the one slipping. But now I saw the pattern. It didn't care. It was containment. The footage came later that evening. Maya sent it to a private drive. I watched it once alone in the motel headphones, in tea gone cold beside me. The camera angle caught the kitchen from behind the bookshelf. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Bradley's hand on my arm. Juliana stepped forward. The tension in my shoulders. The shift in weight. The glass is breaking. There was no struggle, no accidental stumble, just cold intent. I paused the video on the frame where I was mid-fall, arms flailing, slightly mouth open but silent. My own face looked unfamiliar. Not scared, not angry, just tired. I closed the laptop and sat still for a long time. That moment, clear, undeniable, wasn't just proof. It was the breaking point. The next morning I wrapped my hand again, slower this time. I drank my tea with both hands on the mug, grounding myself. I wasn't going back, not to the house, not to the silence I used to live in. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet. I needed to be smart. Precise. I wasn't just a mother who had been hurt. I was a woman who had spent decades reading hospital budgets, navigating family disputes between patients, diffusing boardroom battles with a calm voice and sharper mind. They thought I was weak, that I would fold quietly. But they had forgotten who built the life they now stood on. And I had just remembered. They thought I lived on my pension. A modest check from the state, maybe a little leftover from my husband's account. I never corrected them. There was no need. I didn't dress flashy. I wore old sweaters and bought generic brands. I drove the same sedan for 14 years and only replaced it when the repair bills got too high. But what they never knew was that behind all that quiet living, I had built something. Slowly, carefully, without announcements or advice from anyone. It started when I was still working full-time, managing a long-term care unit with a rotating team and a budget most people couldn't untangle. I learned how money moved, how hospitals spent, how vendors negotiated, how funding was allocated. I started investing small, just 500 here, 1,000 there. I focused on real estate trusts tied to medical properties, rehab centers, nursing facilities. Nothing glamorous but steady, predictable. And over time, it grew. Clients I had worked with left gifts in their wills. Small trusts, sometimes stocks. One left me a portion of his interest in a rural wellness center, saying it had saved his sister's life and I had saved his. I tucked it all away. Never spent a dollar of it. By the time I retired, I had diversified into low-risk municipal bonds, private health initiatives, and a quiet portfolio built on long-term stability. My name wasn't on any glossy magazine, but my balance sheet could have bought and sold the house they were so desperate to claim. $12 million. That's what it was worth the last time I checked. Not in a single account, not in cash, but spread out, protected. Structured to be safe. Built to last. And I never said a word about it, not to Bradley, not to Juliana. They assumed I needed help, that I stayed in their house because I couldn't afford to live alone. I watched the kids for free because I had no other choice. It made them feel powerful. like they held something over me. But they didn't. Because the truth is, I could have walked away at any time. I just hadn't. Not because I was weak, but because I still believed family meant something. Now, sitting alone in that motel with bandages on my hand and snow collecting on the windowsill, I realized the full weight of what I had. Not just the money, but the freedom, the leverage. And I was done pretending. I didn't move fast. I moved deliberately. Every step had to be quiet but exact. I started with the video. I downloaded it to an external drive, then backed it up twice. Once in a secure cloud folder. Once to a physical USB I kept on me at all times. I labeled nothing, left no traces. If anyone checked my devices, they'd find photos of grandkids and grocery lists. Nothing more. Then I printed the deed to the house. My name sat clearly at the top. Not shared, not amended, no transfers. I had felt guilty for holding on to it all those years. That guilt saved me. I pulled out old tax filings, utility bills, and bank statements, highlighted dates, circled transactions Bradley had insisted on managing, added copies of emails where Juliana asked about inheritance planning, and hinted at changes to my will. Every piece of paper had a purpose. Every document told a story. I wasn't just collecting proof. I was building a timeline, an argument, a strategy. When I had everything in one place, I opened the black folder. No markings, no labels. Just matte leather and a clean snap. I slid the documents inside, organizing them by weight, not just by category. The video went last. I didn't need to see it again. Once was enough. I called Nadine the next morning. A referral from a woman I trusted. Former judge, now private elder law attorney. Her voice on the phone was low and steady. Clipped, but not cold. She didn't ask for drama. She asked for facts. I gave her everything. Explained what happened, what I had, what I feared might come next. She asked me to meet in person. I drove across town that afternoon, folder in hand coat, zipped tight. Her office was small. No plaques on the wall, just books and a legal pad. She didn't smile when I walked in. She nodded once, then reached for the folder. We sat for 43 minutes. No interruptions. She flipped through each page, made notes in shorthand, and didn't speak until she was done. When she did, her words were simple. You have a case. She outlined the next steps. Protective order, formal complaint, financial forensics. We'd start quietly. No announcements, no contact with them. She would file the first motion in silence. I nodded. I didn't need loud. I needed control. And now, for the first time in a long time, I had it. The foundation started with a single check. I wrote it from a new account separate from everything else and made it out for $5 million. That number had weight, not just in value, but in purpose. It meant I wasn't going back. Not to that house, not to that life, and not to being anyone's silent possession. I called it the Quiet Foundation. Not because it was small, but because the women I had in mind knew how loud silence could be. Women like me who had spent their lives in service only to be treated like afterthoughts when we were no longer needed. The mission was simple. Housing, legal aid, and emotional support for older women who had been displaced, abandoned, or quietly erased from their families. Not through screaming matches or dramatic exits, but through subtle cruelty. Through being ignored. Through were asked to move out of their own bedrooms to make space for a home office or a new baby. Through words like inconvenience. I hired a team I trusted. Maya came on board to oversee operations. Nadine helped structure the legal end. I didn't need a big office, just a place with chairs that didn't creak and lights that didn't hum too loudly. Our first meeting was held in a small community center just outside the city. We sent private invites. No press, no flyers. Just phone calls and quiet conversations through the right networks. I expected maybe 5 women would come. 12 showed up. They arrived slowly, coats buttoned to the top, most of them carrying something in their hands. Totes, old purses, plastic grocery bags with papers inside. No one spoke at first, just nods, eyes that glanced and darted away. I introduced myself. Told them I wasn't here to fix their lives. Just to share space, to offer what I had and to listen if they ever wanted to talk. A woman named Carolyn was the first to speak. She said her daughter moved her into a basement 3 years ago, then stopped coming down to check on her. Another woman, Joyce, said she hadn't had her own house key in a decade. They weren't angry, just tired. We sat in a circle, passing around coffee and warm muffins someone had brought. We didn't have a schedule, just time and space to exhale. By the end of the hour, the room had changed. Shoulders loosened. One woman laughed, then covered her mouth like it was a mistake. We told her not to, that it was okay. I didn't tell them how much money I had or how the fund worked. I didn't want gratitude. I just wanted to build something they could stand on if the ground gave out under them. Over the next few weeks, we will open the first 3 temporary living spaces. Small apartments with clean sheets, warm lighting, and locks that only the women living there could open. We offered legal guidance for those who wanted to reclaim property or assets, and financial literacy workshops for women who had never been allowed to manage money. Each time I stepped into one of those rooms, I felt something shift. Not pride, not power, just peace. A kind I hadn't known in a long time. People think revenge is about fire, about raising your voice and watching someone else burn. But this wasn't about them anymore. This was about making sure none of us had to sit in silence again. The Quiet Foundation wasn't flashy. We didn't do ribbon cuttings or gala dinners. But we grew. Word spread one whisper at a time. And every time someone asked me why I started it, I told them the truth. Because I had been lucky. Because I had the means. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your voice is to use it to lift someone else. That's when you start to feel whole again. Not just healed. Whole. The house was modern. All white walls and glass railings staged to perfection. Soft jazz played in the background, and waiters in black vests passed flutes of sparkling water with lemon slices. I walked through the front door like any other guest, unhurried, unnoticed at first. It had been 8 months. I had changed my hair, let it go fully silver. I wore a deep navy suit and a pearl pin my mother had given me. Not flashy, just sharp. Understated. Juliana stood near the kitchen island, greeting a couple with wide smiles and practiced warmth. She looked confident, polished. Every word she said landed like she had rehearsed it 100 times. She hadn't seen me yet. I didn't speak to anyone. I just walked the floor, taking in the clean lines and neutral tones. It was her big day. Her first solo listing under a new real estate firm. They were trying to attract investors, people with vision, people with money. She finally turned and saw me as I neared the hallway display. For a second, she froze. Her mouth parted slightly, but no sound came out. She blinked twice, like trying to confirm what she was seeing. I smiled. Not wide, just enough. Bradley wasn't there. He never liked crowds. Or maybe he knew. Juliana took a step forward, unsure, her face flickering between surprise and calculation. She opened her mouth, probably to ask what I was doing there. I didn't let her speak. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, cream-colored card, handed it to her without a word. She looked down, scanned the name printed in fine black letters. Elly Hart. Strategic partner. Hart and Gray Living Concepts. Her fingers trembled slightly. Not visibly, not to others, but I saw it. I didn't say a word. I let the silence settle heavy and final. I looked her in the eye just long enough to watch the shift happen. Realization, regret, recognition. Not because she was sorry, but it was too late. Someone from the firm came over, then asking if I was part of the investment group from downtown. Juliana didn't answer. I turned to the woman and said, yes, I was here to observe the space. I left before the event ended. I didn't need to stay. The message had already been delivered, wrapped in silence and sealed with presence. I wasn't there to fight. I was there to be seen, to remind her that I existed, that I was never small, and that I had never belonged to her narrative. She had written me out, buried me under false kindness and quiet dismissal. but I had turned the page and rewritten the ending. The ruling came on a Wednesday morning. The court acknowledged what the footage showed, what the documents proved, and what I had known for months. The restraining order was granted. Financial control returned to me, quietly, without a trial or headlines. There was no dramatic courtroom moment, no confrontation across polished floors, just a series of signed papers, a quiet nod from Nadine, and a slow walk back to her office in the fall wind. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel relief, just calm, like something had been realigned inside me. That night, I went back to my apartment and lit a candle by the window. Outside, the city moved on as it always did, unaware of the quiet wars people fought behind closed doors. I made a cup of tea, sat at the same table where I'd first laid out the folder. Everything looked smaller now, less heavy. I pulled out a notebook, not the legal kind, just a simple one with a soft blue cover. I opened to a fresh page and wrote 4 words. I am not broken. Then I closed it. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. Some days I still feel the old ache in my hand where the glass cut deep. And sometimes I wonder if Bradley ever thinks about me, if he regrets, if he remembers who I was before I became an obstacle. But I don't wait for that answer anymore. Instead, I meet with the women from the foundation. We share stories, not always sad ones. Sometimes we just talk about music or the best way to grow tomatoes in a small planter. We laugh more than we cry now. I walk more, breathe easier. I've found that peace isn't something loud. It's the space between what happened and what you do next. I didn't rebuild my life to prove anything. I didn't rise from that fall to make a point. I did it because I still had something left to give. Because life didn't end when they closed that door. It shifted. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just being whole again is the victory.